Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So Hare Krishna, dear devotees. So today we'll be going through chapter 5 of Srimad Bhagavad Gita in the Bhakti-Gyan course. So first we'll look at a little summary of the 4 chapters. So in the first chapter, Krishna is the main person. And we see that Arjuna didn't want to fight, so there was a weakness of heart. Chapter 2, Arjuna asked Krishna for help. Then Krishna reviewed his identity as soul, his duties, and the nature of the person who does his duties. In chapter 3, Krishna explains how one can do his duty without attachment to the fruits, set an example to the world, and avoid sinful acts less. In chapter 4, Krishna explains how transcendental knowledge is passed down, his own mission on earth, different types of action, and importance of acquiring knowledge through a bona fide spiritual master. So these were the 4 chapters. So in this chapter, Karma Yoga, action in Krishna consciousness. So we'll see Arjun wants further clarification as he was confused by Krishna's instruction of renunciation. So the Lord will guide him how to turn work into worship. Outwardly performing all actions, but inwardly renouncing their fruits, the wise man purified by the fire of transcendental knowledge attains peace, detachment, forbearance, spiritual vision, and bliss. So how can we get there? Every journey starts with a step in this chapter. Krishna explains how to take steps in the right direction. There are steps leading to further entanglement in worldly complexity, but there are also steps leading to a life of liberation, freedom, and tranquility. So the themes of this chapter 5, Nishkama Karma Yoga, is described where results are surrender to the Lord. The result of such action is that we, the soul, we realize we are not the doers. When we take shelter of Lord, the soul will see all souls with equal vision. The Lord also gives the first hit of Ashtanga Yoga to Arjuna. We'll also see how to understand the position of the Lord will lead us to a peace formula. We, as active beings, constantly making plans for the future. Our thoughts manifest in actions. Repeated actions form habits. Those habits make up our character, and that character determines our destiny. So this is a summary of the chapter 5, Karma Yoga, actioning Krishna consciousness. So who will read? Shyamali, can you read the English?
Yes, Hare Krishna Mataji, okay.
Okay, so I read the Sanskrit and then you can read the English of text 1. Arjuna Vacha Sanyasam Karmanam Krishna Punaryogam Cha Shamsati Yachreya Etayorekam Tanme Bruhi Sunishchitam.
Arjuna said, O Krishna, first of all, you asked me to renounce work, and then again, you recommend work with devotion. Now, will you kindly tell me definitely which of the two is more beneficial?
Text 2. Shri Bhagavana Vacha Sanyasa Karma Yogascha Nishreyasa Karabhubhau Tayostu Karma Sanyasa Karma Yogo Vishishyate.
The personality of Godhead replied, the renunciation of work and work in devotion are both good for liberation. but of the two, work in devotional service is better than renunciation of work.
Text 3. Jnaya sa nitya sannyasi yo na dveshti na kankshati nirdvandho hi mahabhaho sukham bandhat pramuchyate.
One who neither hates nor desires the fruits of his activities is known to be always renounced. Such a person, free from all dualities, easily overcomes material bondage and is completely liberated. O mighty Arjuna.
Text 4. Sankhya yoga prithak bala pravadanti na pandita ekam apyastita samyak ubhayor vindate phalam.
Only the ignorant speak of devotional service, karma yoga, as being different from the analytical study of the material world, that is Sankhya. Those who actually learned say that he who applies himself well to one of these paths achieves the results of both.
Text 5. Yat sankhya prapyate sthanam yat yoga api gamyate ekam sakhyam cha yogam cha ya pashyati sa pashyati.
One who knows that the position reached by means of analytical study can also be attained by devotional service, and who therefore sees analytical study and devotional service to be on the same level, sees things as they are.
Aho dukham aptum ayogata yoga yukto munir brahma na chirena digacchati.
Merely renouncing all activities, yet not engaging in the devotional service of the Lord, cannot make one happy. But a thoughtful person engaged in devotional service can achieve the supreme without delay.
Text 7. Yoga yukto vishuddhatma vijitatma jitendriya sarva bhutatma bhutatma purvannapi na lipyate.
One who works in devotion, who is a pure soul, and who controls his mind and senses, is dear to everyone, and everyone is dear to him. Though always working, such a man is never entangled.
Text 8 and 9. Naiva kinchit karomiti yukto manyeta tatvavit pashyan shrinvan sprishan jigran ashnan gachan swapan swasan pralapan visrijan grihnan unnishan nimishan api indriyanindriyartheshu vartanta iti dharayan.
A person in the divine consciousness, although engaged in seeing, hearing, touching, smelling, eating, moving about, sleeping, and breathing, always knows within himself that he actually does nothing at all. Because while speaking, evacuating, receiving, or opening, or closing his eyes, he always knows that only the material senses are engaged with their objects and that he is aloof from them.
Text 10. ब्रह्मण्याधाय कर्माणि सङ्गं त्याग्वा करोति यः लिप्यतेन स पापेन पद्मपत्रम् इवाम्भसा.
One who performs his duty without attachment, surrendering the result unto the Supreme Lord, is unaffected by sinful action, as the lotus leaf is untouched by water.
Text 11. Ayena manasa buddhya kevale indriyayrapi yogina karma kurvanti sangam tyagvatma shuddhaye.
The yogis, abandoning attachment, act with body, mind, intelligence, and even with the senses, only for the purpose of purification.
Text 12. Yukta karma phalam tyagva shanti mapnoti naishtikim ayukta kama karena phale sakto nibadhyate.
The steadily devoted soul attains unadulterated peace because he offers the result of all activities to me. Whereas a person who is not in union with the divine, who is greedy for the fruits of his labor, becomes entangled.
So the summary of verses 1 to 12. Despite Krishna's explanations in chapter 3, Arjuna still considers work and renunciation to be mutually exclusive paths. Thus Krishna elaborates. An individual who works in spiritual consciousness is automatically elevated to the platform of renunciation. If one engages in righteous work, offering the results to God, and all the while keeping alert to the ultimate goal, then such work becomes worship. For most people, it would be premature and detrimental to sever themselves from worldly relationships and duties in pursuance of spiritual perfection. Thus, the path of Karma Yoga offers a progressive means of spiritual development while simultaneously staying in the world. Just as a lotus leaf is surrounded by water, it remains completely dry. One can stay in the world and still remain aloof from its influences. Lesson 19. So how to purify our work obligations. A portion of the results should be used in the service of the Lord. Rupa Goswami set the standard. 50% is given to the Lord, 25% to the family, and 25% go as reserve. So one should do whatever is practical. So this Karma Yoga is very, very important for us. We are still working people, going for studies or whatever we are doing, but we should offer everything to the Lord and not be entangled or attached to whatever fruits we have. So this is very important so that we can progress in our spiritual life.
Yeah.
Yes, any comments?
No, sounds good. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Unless there's any other questions, we can carry on.
Okay, so shall we
Mm.
continue?
Yeah, yeah.
Text 13, Riyansh. Will you read the Sanskrit, Riyansh?
Yes, Mataji.
Okay. Sitaram Prabhu, will you read the English one?
Yes, Mataji.
Okay, text 13.
Text 13. Sarvakarmani manasa Sannyasyaste sukham vashi navadvare pore dehi naiva kurvanna karayan.
When somebody living being controls his nature and mentally renounces all action, he resides happily in the city of 9 gates, the material body, neither working nor causing work to be done.
Text 14. Nakartavetam nakarmani lokasya srajati prabhu nakarma phala samyogam svabhavastu pravartate.
Somebody, the spirit, master of the city of this body, does not create activities, nor does he induce people to act, nor does he create the fruits of action. All this is enacted by the modes of material nature.
Text 15. Nadate kasyachit papam nachaiva sakritim vibho Anyanyena ritam jnanam tena muhyanti jantava.
Nor does the Supreme assume anyone's sinful or pious activities. Embodied beings, however, are bewildered because of the ignorance which covers the real knowledge.
Text 16. Jnanena tudad ajnanam yesham nashitam atmana tesham aditya vajnanam prakashayati tatvaram.
When, however, one is entangled with the knowledge by which nation is destroyed, then his knowledge reveals everything as the sun lights up everything in the daytime.
Thank you. Summary of verses 13 to 16. While living in this world, one can easily assume the mentality that they are the director, the controller, and the breadwinner. In reality, Krishna explains that there are three doers in any activity. The individual soul can only desire, what to speak of controlling the results of our activities. We are barely in control of even the physical and mental tools with which we perform those activities. So the second doer, the super soul, that desire is then sanctioned by God, who resides within the heart as the super soul. And third, material nature. Then the ability to perform that activity comes from material nature, devas, which arranges the necessary facilities. So lesson 20. When we desire to buy something non-essential, think once, twice, even thrice, whether we really need the item we desire. Generally, we find that by the time we have asked this ourselves by the third time, we decide that we do not need the item. This demonstrates that the soul can only desire, and also we can control our desires. So very important here that we have really to control these desires, because this is what is going to bind us in this material world. So whatever we are doing, we are not really the doer. That's all material nature, devas, the super soul, that is really doing everything. We are nothing in this world. Any comments?
Yeah, no, makes sense. Because we are thinking we are the doers, but actually there's so many doers in any activity, as Krishna is explaining. And later on, he explains even further the other doers. So, but at least our desire, that what we can do is try to limit our material desires as much as we can, and increase our spiritual desires. And that way we can move forward in our spiritual life. Any questions from anybody? Otherwise, we can carry on. Oh, yes, yes. You're welcome to explain that diagram.
Okay, so this one is the relationship between the soul, the super soul, and the modes of material nature. So everything starts with the soul desiring something where the Lord does not interfere. Then the Lord, as the super soul, sanctions those desires that the soul deserves. So the Lord is the director of the choreography who causes activities to be done through material nature. So through when we desire something, then the Lord will decide whether this will be sanctioned or not. Then the modes of material nature carry out actions to fulfill those desires. Body and actions are choreographed by the modes. So whatever happens, it's through the modes of material nature. And this is established by the living entity, and he is not the only doer. Then who is responsible? The super soul is not responsible for our action because as assigned by the desires of the living entity. The super soul is the ultimate controller of the activities, but not the initializer, and the modes of the material nature are the agents of the Lord. So the living entity is responsible for his own good and bad action, and thus is responsible for the consequences also. So all this is comes to exist through the desires of the soul, the bad actions and the good actions. We are responsible for the consequences. So the benefits of understanding the position of the Supreme Lord leads to the stage of perfect knowledge. When one surrenders unto the Lord, then we have real happiness, real peace. So knowledge is very important, that we should control these desires, that we are responsible for good and bad actions, and of course the material nature make us act according to our desires. But through perfect knowledge, then we can really understand and surrender to the Lord and have spiritual bliss, happiness, and that will be the real peace.
Yes, sounds good.
Any other comments? Or shall we stop here because I think it will be long.
Yes, yes,
17
makes sense. Yeah,
17 to 28.
yeah, that's fine. That's good.
Okay. We are halfway anyway.
Yeah, makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki
Yeah.
jai. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.